Good afternoon and welcome to Breaking Fry Bread. I'm Dave. This is Ty. And we have with us today special guest Anna Bean. Anna is an enrolled Puyallup Tribal member, currently serving as one of 7 elected officials for the Puyallup Tribe of Indians. She was selected by the Puyallup Tribal Council in the fall of 2021 to serve on the Attorney General of Washington State's IWP task force, as well as the council delegate for IWP. Throughout her time on the task force, she moved her way to chair of the tribe's subcommittee and co-chair of the executive committee. Anna also works alongside Puyallup Tribal member Carolyn DeFord, who was also appointed to the AG's task force. Good afternoon, Anna.
Hoxla, thank you guys for the invitation.
We're so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm here, but on the screen.
You know what? You're doing what's important. You're at your daughter's track meet.
Yeah, I feel like a creeper, though. I'm sitting in my car watching her through my window talking to you guys.
You know what? That's okay. I'm going to tell you what. My kids play baseball, and my mom went to watch my daughter play, and she was in her car. She wouldn't get out of the car. She wouldn't move the car. She drove up right next to the field. It was kind of wild from what I heard. And, that's your prerogative. You do what you do. And as long as you're there, that's what's important. I remember as a kid playing sports that, I would be out there practicing or playing a game. And the number one thing that I was looking for was one of my parents to show up. Like it didn't really matter what was going on in the field or on the ice or whatever I was doing. I was always looking at, and when I saw them, I was like, man, they're here. And that was happiness for me. So I think that it's awesome that you're there supporting your family.
Mine is completely the opposite. I was very involved in sports all over the place, and I actually have a high jump record for the state of Washington. Believe it or not, Anna Jumping Bean over here.
Oh, you got buddies? Anna Bean got buddies? Okay.
Yeah, I do. She does. She's got some hops. But anyhow, so with that, I didn't always have people who showed up. And that's one of the things that I found very important for me is I never want my kids to be able to utilize that in life and have like a feeling that people didn't show up. So even though I'm being a creeper in the car, but I did see her. She just did the long jump, and she just jumped 7 feet. And so I'm pretty stoked about her. So she's got some hops too.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. And you know what? Sports are one of the most important things that we can do for our kids, for life, for getting along, for accomplishing tasks. So that's absolutely fantastic. We're here to talk about MMIWP. That is a mouthful if you aren't familiar with it. An amazing program. For those who may be on the call who may have never heard of it, who may not know what it means, who may not know anything about it, who may be like, what are these people talking about today? Can you give us the background, the what is? Can you share with us what is this task force and what does it mean to not only natives, but to anybody else who might be listening in today?
Okay, so to give a little bit more of a background, this is going on for way longer than the current times. And even when you think of things I don't even know, Disney movies and things like that, and they have the story of Pocahontas, the real truth to that and her age and all those types of things. I believe she was one of the original MMIW. And so many years ago, where it's not like it's new to our communities, but labeling it may have been. And so most folks are now familiar with MMIW because it was pertaining to women in Canada who had gone missing, and there began a movement up there of folks, mobilizing and bringing awareness to it because there were so many. And so then folks are starting to recognize it in all of our communities. And my brother often says, what affects one of us affects all of us. And that's really what's happened here. And a lot of people, when they're going through these tragedies in their lives, they feel completely and totally alone. And so bringing light to the subject, not just in the movement, but like you guys are doing now with National MMIW Day, coming up here on May 5th. I appreciate you guys for coming in line with that. And so that's why Carolyn and I are happy to be here, because we'll always be a part of bringing awareness. So anyway, to get to Washington State, the Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office decided that they were going to put a call out because they realized that we needed to organize here in the state of Washington because of the high levels of missing and murdered within our state of Indigenous people, men, women, and children. And so just the back and forth just on the name alone, it didn't start out as that. That was us trying to create a to give honor to MMIW, the movement that began, but to be inclusive of all of our Indigenous people who are gone missing and murdered. And so this was in the fall of 2020. And to be real honest, and I really want to raise my hands to the Puyallup Tribal Council, because I seen that it was on the agenda and I was in another meeting. And I really believe in the power of prayer, because I'm not even there in chambers when the decision was made to appoint me. I never even spoke to anybody. And so it was like a gift to me coming back and finding out. And I just wanted to be a part of the work that was there. And Carolyn DeFord is someone in our community who's a Puyallup tribal member. I don't want to tell her story because that is her story, but because of her story and her mother brought more light of the realness of the reality of how this affects people in our community, because most of the time you're seeing it in magazines and you're hearing about it in other places, but you can't believe it's happening in your own backyard, or you know what I mean? So she was a part of like bringing some awareness. And when I actually met Carolyn, I believe it was in 2017, I started to, I don't like to talk about something or represent something if without any background. I can't just go off of what I hear from you. So I started like searching into it, and then there's been folks that have been mobilizing throughout our state. And then they would have like these events on May 5th. And then they would talk about the red dresses. So you'll see folks during a period of time, that's how they would put it out in memory in honor of these women at the time. So they have their red dress projects. And so it's really important to look into that, just for anybody viewing, is so that you can really feel compelled to be a part of this, and understanding it's so much bigger than some of the things that we see. So in that, they had our very first meeting in regards to this task force. We didn't really have a name. We just knew it was under the AG's office. And we started meeting at the time just once a month. And in that period of time, we were putting guidelines, regulations, and everything to this task force, and the need for certain aspects of legal, Washington State Patrol, all the different law enforcement agencies, how to be inclusive of all the families, because that's important that the families are heard and seen, because without the families, none of this exists, because it's the families who've really brought it to the forefront, and all of the grassroots work and everything that's been done to get it to this level where it's not just holding up a sign somewhere. It's not just wearing a shirt. It's getting to the point of action being taken and rulemaking, and to narrow in on this epidemic that is happening in Indian country. We are a hunted people as Indigenous people. And a lot of people don't feel that way because it's out of sight, out of mind. If it hasn't happened to you, you don't think it can. And yes, it can. And the more and more as I've been on this task force, I get more and more in fear for my people all of the time, which are our people. And it's not just women, it's not just men, and it's not just our children. It's all of us. And a lot of the reporting that goes on, that's a big, huge concern, because even like when people are taking a police report, if they're not identifying them as an Indigenous person, that switches the numbers up on those reports. So the reporting structure and the urgency of some of these law enforcement agencies to come when folks are coming in, when they're coming to you for help, a lot of folks feel helpless, even when, because we're raised to believe that when you call the police, and this isn't a jab or a negative, it's not everybody and it's not all the time. But when you go for help, you assume that when you make a call to the cops, I'm going to be okay. But that's not always been the case. And there's been a lot of things that have happened over the course of time, and where folks weren't able to get the help or the assistance that they needed. They were screaming for help. And I feel like the AG was trying with this plan, trying to answer that call, and they ensured that Indigenous voices were heard, that the family voices were heard, that Native leadership were heard. And so inclusive, and it's kind of like casting a net over the state of Washington of different resources and people who are front line and see all these things, that again, we can get more awareness and get more work done when we're working together.
I love it. I love it. I want to get a little bit more into the task force and some of the work that happens there, but I want to go back to what you said about law enforcement. When somebody calls 911, and this isn't just for MMIW, I noticed this is an issue on the Puyallup Reservation and probably all across Indian country, is everywhere. When you call 911, there's a question on who has jurisdiction here, right? And so there could be a domestic violence in progress, and you call 911. Well, that jurisdiction is now scrambling. Oh, that's tribal jurisdiction. Let me transfer you. You transfer to the tribe. Their dispatch says, oh, this is Pierce County's jurisdiction. And a lot can happen in that time, in that missed time, you know?
Well, time is of the essence in any type of emergency, right? So, and you're talking to the right one, because I get to sit in these rooms with all these different folks. And Carolyn and I were just invited to the city of Seattle, where they were having all the attorney general, the Democratic attorney generals from across the nation there. And we did a presentation to them, and I couldn't believe how many people weren't aware of MMIWP. And so when you're talking about jurisdictions, I will scream this everywhere. I don't understand why you can't carry the water until your jurisdiction ends and pass it off to the next. It seems really simple when we're talking about it, but it doesn't happen. And I think, I don't know if it's like there's been a lot that has happened over the course of time that has changed things in law enforcement in general, that has made it difficult on law enforcement themselves. And I said, it's not everybody, it's not all the time, but there's all these different barriers within just like the jurisdictional issue. And as Indian people, we see that all day, all the time. And it's not just in legal or law enforcement. So yes, that's here. So that's where I feel like in the work that we are a part of with the Attorney General's office, we're able to form these relationships and give more information. And we're also giving background to some of these law enforcement agencies on how to come in and have conversations with our people, or when they approach us. Sometimes maybe you have to maybe approach, well, you should approach everybody differently. And we're basically educating folks on the best practices in engaging with our folks. Like, I know they see a lot, they deal with a lot, but when you're dealing with people in crisis and they don't know where their relative is at, or maybe they have information and they don't feel heard, then that creates a negative reaction to those folks that are to assist, and it becomes too much. I don't know. I could beat up this subject all day, but I really do have those conversations with folks all the time. And that's my regular conversation. I don't understand why you can't carry the water as far as you can and pass it off. If we were all doing it, it'd be less water for each one of us to carry.
Yes, let's be unified. Let's be unified. Let's focus on the issue. Let's focus on the emergency and handle it as a community, right? Rather than, that's what I'd like to see.
Jurisdiction is a barrier, and there's people who do the best work inside their jurisdiction, and some jurisdictions just don't want to work with us, and we find that all the time in our own community. A lot of our surrounding jurisdictions, even though they will publicly say that they want to work with us, they are hard to work with. And
I've
so
seen
when
that.
you're in crisis, I can't even imagine. And I know our people they do their best to work with all of them, but it's a lot of folks that are not trying to work with us.
So would you say that this is something that needs to be worked out at the government level, government to government? Do we need to improve on those relations and push these issues? I guess I relate it to like homelessness down there in our area in downtown Tacoma, and some of these camps that are set up on the side streets. what can we do as a joint effort to help with
Well,
that
it's not
issue?
just government to government is really necessary, but it involves so many levels of government. It's not just, yes, there is the Puyallup tribe, but we're within another jurisdiction that's within another jurisdiction and another jurisdiction, and then you add in federal regulations. So there's all these barriers. Yes, there needs to be conversations consistently about knocking down the barriers when it becomes to the welfare of human life. And it shouldn't be a hard conversation. And I can't believe it's 2024 and we haven't knocked all these barriers down. It's just and so when you're in the middle of these, that's why so many people, they'd rather just take matters into their own hands and handle it. But then you have the repercussions for dealing with it on your own because you violated the law. And I'm not ever telling anybody to not do that, but I'm just saying, it's like, but when it comes to your family, say one of your relatives goes missing, you are not going to stop until they're found. And you don't care what anybody tells you, yes or no, or that's out of our jurisdiction. You're not going to sit and be told no very long about your own relative. And so that's
Right.
what happens in a lot of these cases, over the course of time. And there's just, and it's so many, but then the overload, and then we're talking about jurisdiction, and then we think about all these changes and things that have happened. The Washington State police, I believe they lost. We went to something. It might have been in. I can't remember. We were with another neighboring tribe, and they were holding a conference there. And they had somebody who came in from the Washington State Police and said that they were down at that time an additional 230 to 70 officers. So there's also a shortage in help. And we're
There
finding
is.
that everywhere. It's not just in law enforcement, it's everywhere. And COVID really changed that too. I think folks, it's hard to get a lot of folks to work, and it's not a negative thing. I think during that period of time, folks learned what they could live with and live without.
I think
And there's
it
just it's so many levels, you know what I
there
mean?
is a lot of levels. I think you touched on some. The city of Seattle during COVID is supposed to be staffed with 2,200 police officers. During COVID, they had 800. They were down 1,400 police officers in the city of Seattle. That's a big deal. If you look at what's going on in Pittsburgh right now, they're not going to respond to anything that's happening. Between like 3 and 7 o'clock in the morning. They're calling it the purge of Pittsburgh. You're seeing it on the news. Just a shortage of officers, a shortage of respondents. And so I think that definitely plays into it, but it's no excuse for what you've shared. I'd like to dive into. You made a comment earlier that I think was pretty profound, and you said that we are a hunted people. And I put that down in my notes. It's not just women. It's not just men. It's not just children. But as a whole, Native Americans are a hunted people. And I'm curious, why is that? What makes a Native American different? Why are we a hunted people? What's happening there? Because that also plays into what we're talking about with responsiveness, with jurisdiction, not having defined escalation processes. What makes us hunted?
Ooh, that's a fully loaded question, and I think, again, like everything I talk to you about is going to be in like layers. Um, well, I think first and foremost, so many people don't even realize that Native Americans are still here. I mean, we're having to tell people this everywhere all the time.
Right.
So, I think if we talk about land acquisitions in areas like that, that's one. I mean, a lot of us have land in places, and I'm sure other folks would want it. Um, as sometimes, I know our tribe is a little bit different. We're more urban than a lot of the tribes, but they're in rural areas, and when you don't see them, nobody's gonna know. You know what I mean? If somebody assumes that you're not gonna know, um, I can't pinpoint the reason. I'm not hunting us, so I can't
Sure.
say. But then on top of it, there's people who just think that all we do is run around with casino money, and we're alcoholics, and who's gonna miss an alcoholic and a gambler? But that's not who we are. That's something we might do. And so these misconceptions of us, I believe, are one of those things. But if people think you're out of sight and out of mind, then nobody's going to miss you if you go missing.
That's very true.
There's predators. I mean, there's predators everywhere. The predators are only growing. When you don't address predators, they grow. And there's predators in every race. There's predators everywhere all the time. And for some reason, we've become those folks that are assumed that it's okay to do things to us. And I mean, you see it through all of history. They came in and they took our land. They came in and removed us. They came in and put us in boarding schools. So we're those people that we're constantly fighting for who we are and our identity and our land and our people and our rights. How many people have to do that? How many people do you walk around that are constantly talking about having to fight for their right to live?
Well put.
Absolutely. When there's money
I'm like sitting
involved.
over here going like, oh, you guys don't want to get me started.
Actually, you know what? Keep
That's
going.
what makes a great show. You know what? The more passionate, and the thing is, nobody cares. Nobody does anything unless people stand up and are passionate about what they believe in. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
Then you also have the folks that do know we're here, but then they're mystified by us and they want to touch us and, ooh, I can't believe you're here. Oh my God, I want to touch your hair. And then guess what? They start being culture vultures and they start taking what's ours and putting it on themselves, and they're selling replicas of our things, and you see these videos of these people having these holy events and they're beating on drums. And why? It's just, I don't know. People, I don't know what it has to do with the native people, but it's just like, I don't know.
Well, a lot of it starts with money. The predators, it's a well-known fact that we are a per capita tribe, and there's per capita tribes out there, and the predators can sense that. So they prey on our youth, they prey on our culture. And so that kind of leads me to my next question is, when I'm seeing MMIW, you see the hand over the face, and you see merchandise, right? You see all kinds of T-shirts with the women in the MMIW regalia with the hand on their face. Are people profiting off that? Are those proceeds going towards the movement, or is that nefarious?
Are you trying to get me in a fight with you today? Because now some folks, there's one thing, they want to be helpful and they want to be a part and they want to acknowledge. Some of those are done for acknowledgement and good purpose. There are some folks who do make profit off of these things. Not some, there's a lot. And a lot of times, it becomes like, I did this in our task force meeting, like our first huge one that we had. And I think like everybody was kind of like, Anna, shut up. But I'm not going to shut up. How many of you are doing these things where when in a movement, some of those things become like a sports team? Well, they want to be a part of something and they're wearing it like you would your Seahawks jersey. And without knowing the people who are attached to those items that you're wearing, to not be personally connected to the people who've gone missing or murdered. As long as the message is there and you know why you're doing it and you're doing it in a good way, there's no problem with that. But I personally think when people are making these things and you're making a profit, you should find an organization that really does something with that money. Like there's all these families who go looking and searching for their loved ones. They need money, lodging for food, gas, all these things. And they don't get anything from that shirt. You know what I mean? These are like, so that's what I'm saying. Like profit can be made on these things. And I'm not saying give it all. I know everybody's got to eat, but give something to those people that you are thinking that you're representing. And I think people have good intentions. I really do. I don't want to believe everybody doesn't, but it becomes very frustrating where you see it being represented in a matter like it's just because it's red and I'm wearing it and it goes with my lipstick. I hope that you're wearing it in memory and honor of these ones who have gone silent.
I've got a quick question for you. Before I do that, we want to welcome.
Sister, I can't help it.
We want to welcome Carolyn DeFord to the show. Welcome to the show. We got a quick bio here just for the audience. Carolyn is a member of the Puyallup Tribe, is a passionate advocate and founder of Missing and Murdered Native Americans, a grassroots organization led by survivors, relies on volunteers to support families and raise awareness through social media. Carolyn's involvement traces back to 1999 when her mother, Leona LeCaire Kinsey, went missing from La Grande, Oregon. I hope I got that right. In the wake of her mother's disappearance, Carolyn emerged as an advocate for families dealing with the same crisis. At the heart of Carolyn's advocacy lies the belief domestic violence and human trafficking awareness is paramount in preventing MMIWP cases. In addition, Carolyn actively engages in providing testimony and consultation on related local and national legislation and initiatives. Her desire for integrating culture into the healing process following trauma has not only helped towards her personal journey, but has instilled a sense of purpose in assisting others. Today, Carolyn serves as the trafficking program manager at Puyallup Tribe's Community Domestic Violence Advocacy Program and serves as co-chair on the MMIWP Family Subcommittee for Washington State MMIWP Task Force. That was a huge introduction, and I hope I got it right. Thank you for being on the show. I just had one question follow up for Anna, and then Ty is going to jump in and ask you a few questions there, Carolyn. But one question is, you mentioned there is organizations that do a good job, that do give back, that are probably top of line, top of mind. Any of those come to mind that you can share with the audience that we should be focusing on, that we should be supporting?
Well, they shift all the time, so I would defer that to Carolyn because she deals directly with families and where those resources are best placed. So I will gladly defer that to her because there are ones that I used to rock all day, and then and it just happens when money gets involved, some things go awry, and those monies aren't going directly where they need to be. So places that I would have normally listed to you are not on that list anymore, and Carolyn is more up to date on those, so I defer that to her.
All right, Carolyn, you're up.
First, I'm so proud of you, Anna. It's hard to sit here. No, it's not hard. Sitting here and talking about such a horrific, life-changing, heartbreaking, tragic topic and smiling just feels wrong. But I'm really happy for the awareness that we've made, and just to be able to have the opportunity to share within my community. I get invited to talk all over the country. First time I've been invited to talk in my community. So thank you guys.
That's awesome.
And hearing Anna, you just nailed it. People sometimes wear this almost like a costume, or they don't really understand what it means, and they'll buy the red and maybe buy it from a made in China company, and wear it. But when we put a call out to search for someone, we did several public searches for a Puyallup Tribal member over the last, she was missing for almost 2 years, and we might have gotten a dozen people show up for those searches, and maybe half of them Puyallup or Puyallup community members. It's more than just wearing red. Being there to answer the call when someone's missing and going out into those spaces and looking for them, or even if you're, for lack of better word, there is a lot of work to do behind the keyboard, sharing and that kind of thing. So it's kind of actions. We need actions. That red shirt helps raise awareness, and that handprint helps raise awareness. But without being a part of the work that needs to be done, it's really kind of hurtful when we see people constantly showing up for the photo op with their red handprint and their red shirt, and they're smiling, and we're happy to be in space with community, and that is something to smile about. But then when we do the call and families' hearts are breaking and we're imagining every single worst possible scenario and we're begging our community for help and nobody shows up, but you're going to show up for that photo op, it's just mean. That's not who we are. We're all related, we're all connected, and we've lost that when it comes to this kind of searching for our relatives. But to the point of merchandise, it does fluctuate. It changes because a lot of it might be a campaign. that other organizations are doing, where they're promising to, donate so much money to different organizations. I know Recreations, Agnes Woodard or Agnes Yellow Bear, she is a ribbon skirt designer, but also sells shirts on her bonfire account, and that money goes to organizers and to families who are in need. MMIWP families, it goes to sponsoring families at Christmas time. Sovereign Bodies sometimes has opportunities or organizations that donate their funding to them, but you just gotta, if you see something out there that you like, ask, does this money go to you? Where's this money gonna go? Are you keeping it? Does part of it go to the organization? And if they say it goes to the organization, check with that organization, like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this shirt, and they'll usually respond to you pretty quickly, because we're so used to people saying, 10% of my or 20% of my proceeds are going to go to MMIW USA, but MMIW USA they don't know about that, and nothing ever comes. So, some of the organizations will be able to direct you, like, hey, I want to buy a shirt, for May 5th. Do you have anybody you advise? Like right now, I would advise people to do Recreations, buy from their shirts. Families are always doing fundraisers and selling shirts to, raise awareness for court proceedings, for attorneys to travel back and forth to court, for searches, memorials and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it varies, but there's a lot of opportunities to do the good work. When you're buying the merchandise, please make sure that your handprint isn't dripping blood. Because a lot of them are just clip art, where people are they're using these symbols that have been powerful symbols that have been trademarked, but some of them are dripping blood. And that's not necessarily the symbol we're going for, the meaning of the symbolism that we're going for. And it's really triggering. You've already imagined blood, and that's not really what the red handprint symbolizes for us.
That is interesting to know. I did not know that little detail, so I will be sure to be mindful of that if I, come across that.
Siap.
Las boot, lab subit. Carolyn, the first time I remember meeting you, you came in, it's almost like you brought the awareness to the Puyallup Tribe. It's like when you walked on the scene here at the Puyallup Tribe and I met you, you were already screaming, help, MMIW, and you were already bringing awareness to it. So I could tell that you've lived this movement and you've been very passionate about it. And recently, in the past few years, we've seen this hit very close to home. We've lost community members, and as Anna said, what affects one of us affects us all. What do you think that we could do when an emergency happens or we have a call to help? How can we encourage the community to respond better? How can we, and I know this is a tough question, but what do you think we can do to help encourage our members to get out and help with this search? Is it well organized, or are we just out running around looking for our loved ones? What comes with this call to help?
We've had some meetings in the past with law enforcement. Anna was a part of those meetings, and our not attorney general, U.S. attorneys had a liaison that was tasked with helping tribes put together a response protocol. And so we started working on that protocol, and it's really in depth and getting everybody at the challenge. But we need to have a kind of a committee of everybody with their skill set, everybody who brings their gift to the table to bring their gift to the table. We need drummers. Sometimes when we go out into homeless encampments to look for people, our tribal people know what other tribal people are in those encampments. They know everybody who's in there, but when it comes to looking for each other, they're watching out for each other. And when we go into those spaces and they smell our sage and they hear the drums, they come out because they know we're not going to tear their tent down. They know that we're not there to hurt them. We're not, we're family. And they come out and see what's going on. What do we hear? What do we need? And we smudge with them, and they take our posters and give us very good feedback, very good advice and leads and tips. So, whatever anybody's skill is, whether you make posters, whether you're a drummer, sometimes it's just that we need some strong bodies to go into some of these spaces with us. Because most of the time, I'm all thinking most of the time it's women alone, like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of us going out in small groups, because you can't go alone, and going into these dangerous spaces. I mean, we really do need to lock down that protocol. Right now, we have a few folks who are always on call when we need something, and they're priceless. But the burden gets heavy, to those folks who always answer the phone, carrying the water. We need more than just a couple people out there doing it.
You said something. I'm sorry, Anna. Councilwoman Anna Bean. I'm sorry.
So
Real quick.
I just wanted to. Okay, I'll wait.
You said that we should start a subcommittee as a response, right, to help the efforts. I really like that, and I was actually going to direct that to Ms. Councilwoman Anna Bean, and that's something that the Puyallup Tribe could have, possibly.
Well, yes, I don't see that it's something that we couldn't do. Over the course of time, it's been. I feel like I have to get this out or else I can't move my brain, because I wanted to go online with what Carolyn was saying, and I'll finish with that part. But the thing is there's a lot of misconceptions that happen in reporting as well. A lot of people believe that somebody has to be missing for 24 hours in order to make a missing persons report, and that is completely and totally untrue. The moment something shifts and say you get home at 4:00 every single day and it's 4:03, you can make that call because that's outside of the norm of your regular schedule. So a lot of people have that misconception, and that's something that folks need to know. Since this task force has been created, there is also now in the state of Washington called a MIPA, a Missing Indigenous Persons Alert, kind of like the Silver Alert and like the Amber Alert. And Carolyn's better on the numbers of that. I don't know what the newer updates. This is like the last time I think we talked about it was like a couple months ago. But you close in the gap on these folks, and the thing is also people need to start sharing their locations. I can't share that with folks enough, at least one person. And if you're going to be doing something, you're even going out on a date with somebody you've never met before, you need to let somebody know where you're at. So these types of things, when you were saying, asking what people could do or whatever. And then, okay, so back to the committee so we've been like basically getting processes and things more in line, because there hasn't ever really been a real protocol for anybody. So that was kind of on top of changing law and legislation with this task force that we're on. We are in the processes of trying to set up a more like a guideline of steps for folks to call. So when something like this happens, people do not feel alone and like there isn't a plan or a process. So I think we could have one of those within our own community, but I think we want to have one that's universal for anybody who has any of this in any of their communities. So we're not just doing it for Puyallup, that we're doing it for Indian country in general, or for anybody who goes missing.
I've
answered that.
I've got a quick question for you. And this is, I think there's a lot between like truth and fiction and what happens and what's seen in the media and what's seen on TV. Tyler Sheridan, he is the producer of the show Yellowstone. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. He put together a film called Wind River, and this Wind River film, it speaks about the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And how true to the fact is something like that? Does that benefit the cause? Is that off course as far as what you guys see on the boots on the ground? Because it feels like from the conversation, there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of things happening here. And there's a lot of layers to what you're sharing. Like there's stacks of things built upon one another. And then you see what's happening in the media and how the media tries to grab things. Like you can look at, Netflix does a documentary on Wind River or whatnot. How true to the facts are those type of documentaries and films versus what's happening in Indian country? And I'll leave that to either one of you who want to answer.
Paper, rock, scissors, go, shoot. Ew.
There's some truth to it, and some sensationalism. They have been very beneficial in raising awareness on a very large scale. Wind River made MMIW a pretty common name. There's still a lot of people that have heard of the movie but never seen it. There's a lot of Native people that have heard of the movie and never seen it. But they found her, so it's a story of a homicide, and they did eventually get her cause of death classified correctly, and looked at that that it wasn't a voluntary or accidental hypothermia. So that was accurate. A lot of our missing folks, their cause of death may be classified as exposure, hypothermia, organ failure. If they're found in the water, the cause of death is drowning. It doesn't matter if there was a brick tied on their feet, but the cause of death is drowning, because ultimately that is what killed them.
Sure.
And there's not much, the family fights for an accurate, for that cause of death, the accurate cause of death to be labeled and listed and defined, but it really isn't that common. Often we're sitting there struggling with the fact that her organs didn't just fail. Their heart doesn't just stop beating. Their kidneys don't just quit. They didn't turn into hamburger by themselves. And, that was kind of one of the inaccuracies of that, was that they did go get that cause of death. They did find her. A lot of are never found.
Right.
So, there was good and bad to it, but a lot of the documentaries, the issue is so complex. There's so many intersections and places and jurisdictions and vulnerabilities involved in, what happens to someone, that a lot of the shows or the documentaries or pieces, segments that are out on it, they're pretty accurate to that case, but they're all so different.
That's good to know. I want to just ask one follow-up question to that. There's a lot of passion. You guys are involved. You have a lot of facts, a lot of detail, a lot of data around what's happening. To the average Native American on a tribe anywhere across the U.S. or into Canada, what is a simple thing that anyone can do to support the cause? Not something that's, because I heard hey, we have a rally and we're going to go and look for somebody who's missing and 6 people show up, right? That's tough. They don't want to step out. They don't want to, they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be known, or it's not a priority in their day-to-day life of living. What's something simple that anybody can do to get behind this cause, to get behind this awareness, and to help Natives across Indian country?
I think first and foremost is to acknowledge that it's not just 1 or 2 people, that it's a real epidemic. That it's not just a one person issue. And in that it's not just inclusive. It's not just a women's issue, because I think for so long that it's been tossed in the bucket as this is just about women.
Right.
That's one thing, is being inclusive, that it is men, women, and children, and acknowledging it. I think that first and foremost helps, is to acknowledge that it's real, that it's happening, because it's out of sight, out of mind. If it's not happening in your neck of the woods, or you don't know anybody who's been personally affected, and you haven't been personally affected, then people don't acknowledge it, and you go on about your life. Kind of like anybody who goes to a funeral. You do all the hugging and all the pleasantries, and then we say we're going to stay connected, and then when we leave, we stop talking to each other again.
And how should someone acknowledge it? What does that look like for somebody who's listening and they're sitting around the table, or they're sitting on the couch and they're saying, I want to acknowledge it. How do I do that?
Well, I guess first and foremost, from the 2 people that you're speaking to right now, you could get onto or Google the MMIWP Task Force for the state of Washington under the Attorney General's office and review all of the things that we have on that site, and inform yourself about what's going on in this state of Washington. And I know the work that we're doing here, other states are starting to pick up on that. Because I know shortly, probably within a year of the start of the MMIW task force at WP task force in the state of Washington, Arizona reached out to me to ask me some questions, because they were implementing one in another state. So I would say go to that website first, and because there's a lot of information and layers in there. And I would definitely take that MIPA number that's listed on there so that everybody has that number in their phone. So when we say what's going on, because that puts you in contact with different levels of law enforcement, and that gets that information out there quicker. So I would say have the MIPA number in your phone can be one of those things that you could do for yourself.
That's absolutely fantastic. That's awesome advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ty?
The MIPA, I'm really intrigued by that. Hopefully that gets to a point like the Amber Alert where everybody's phones start going off in the store when a MIPA alert happens. How far away are we from that?
I think we just gotta. So here's the fun fact that happens in governments, right? So you like people have like positions for so long, and in the middle of all of this amazing work that we're doing, the head of our task force, Bob Ferguson, may be changing. And so things are starting to happen in the middle of that. And our team has changed. And I think we have a great team no matter what. But you never know when somebody goes into another position if they're taking some of those key components of folks that you've been working with. It's just I don't know how far we are away because we may have to relearn some folks, but we're keeping our foot on their neck. I think they probably don't always love to hear from me and Carolyn because and they especially don't like to hear from me. I feel like, but then they at the same time they want me to be up front, so I don't know. And so they always want me talking to people.
You just got to be you. You just got to get it done.
No, but I think we just have to stay on that and just stay consistent in the work that we've been doing. And I think sometimes we, as people who are on that task force, there's processes and all these things that go into play. So I don't think it's too far off. The fact that we even have a MIPA to me is still a beautiful and amazing thing. And the turnaround that has been on the MIPA since we've had it, but not a lot of people know about it. I think getting the word out there is like a very important thing, and having that, and you can call 911, but please call the MIPA too, because that puts a bigger net on your reach on folks.
Awesome.
I don't know, Carolyn, what do you think? Do you think I should just shut up again?
No, I think the MIPA has been highly successful. Amazing. It's only been 2 years now, and the last numbers were that there were 89 missing Indigenous person alerts, MIPA alerts issued, and 79 of them had been solved at that time. 6 of them were still missing, and 4 had been recovered deceased. Compared to, what if they hadn't been issued? We don't know. But to get those alerts, you can go, there's a link on the Attorney General's website. There's also, if you go to the Washington State Patrol website, you can sign up for alerts. I think it's Amber alerts, and then it lets you choose which alert you want to sign up for. And you can sign up for the Missing Indigenous Persons alert, and it sends you an email with a poster already created and any details that law enforcement agency chose to share. If there's any updates to the case ever, the most recent one, they updated it with a vehicle description, and so they sent out an updated poster with the vehicle. And then the next day she was found, and they sent that out right away too. So you can get those real-time updates there.
So,
but I think the question, and there is that, but I think they were talking about those forced ones, that just come in, the forced alert.
Yeah, I wish we could do that. Yeah, I wish we could do that.
Go ahead, Dave.
So out of the folks that are recovered, and those are good statistics, when that trauma has happened, whether it's been domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, maybe severe damage to one's body, is there a place for a tribal member to go and get healing and get support and get counseling? How does that happen on the tribe for anybody that maybe that's happened to? One of the things that was that happens to people who have been in trauma is they feel like they're alone. They feel like they're isolated. They shut down. They don't want to share. They don't want to open up. But the truth of the matter is that when you do share and you are in the safe rooms and you can have those healings and those conversations and go through that process, you can get better. You are the lucky one in that particular sense. One, if that's happened to you, please reach out to somebody. But 2, if that has happened, where do you reach out as a Native American?
Services are voluntary. if somebody, a lot of times they don't realize that they want help or need help or anything right away. But the Puyallup Tribe Community Domestic Violence Advocacy Program provides care for gender-based violence, survivors of gender-based violence or crimes, human trafficking, DV being major causes or major causes for folks to go missing. They can even, more subtly, just engaging with our culture programs, being out there with our people and doing our good medicine. We have this historical trauma, but we have the historical goodness that happens every day at our culture center, and we can go and be around community and elders and loved ones, and sometimes sitting with our elders and hearing their stories. A lot of the experiences that we have that are causing us trauma are timeless. They're multi-generational issues, but they're not the kind of issues we sit around and talk about, like in the hallway between meetings or that kind of thing. Like, we have to create these safe spaces to be able to bring our stories out, to give our elders space to bring their stories out, how they coped and healed and are still healing, because that teaches us, teaches our younger generations that they're resilient, that they can survive, that the people that we most admire have gone through hell and back and are still powerful, that you're not broken.
And I wanted to add, into addition to CDVAP and culture, we also have Kawachi, our mental health facility, which we are starting to expand services to be mental behavioral health. That gives more services, as well as, like, in line with the culture department. You can contact Connie McLeod. We also have traditional healers that come in too, depending on how you want to take in your medicine of healing. It's not always counseling. I know at CDVAP, I believe they have these talking circles. And within our task force, Carolyn is a part of the families task for subcommittee, and I believe they have events and talking circles and things like that. So it's a matter of what you're comfortable with, but there are resources in our own Puyallup tribal community, and so I know for sure there's CDVAP, Kawachi, and then also within our culture, and then there's so many different folks. It really depends on your comfortableness, and once you've gone through a traumatic experience like that, it takes a little while. Sometimes everybody's like an onion, and it depends on what layer you want to peel at that time.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great answer. Ty, we're getting close to wrapping it up here. What final questions do you have?
I just wanted to, while we have these two subject matter experts here, we are live. I was hoping maybe, Ralph, do we have any questions from the audience? But before that, I just wanted to highlight and acknowledge the work that's being done, not only by you two, but by the task force, by the Attorney General. I did read a little bit about the letter to the Attorney General, the ask or the recommendations in 2023. How far away are we from those recommendations for 2024? Is there gonna be, I would hope to see a media component to that. Can we get more coverage by this epidemic through the media? How can us as viewers or as the common person take action, and how can we get involved? I'd love to see those things. I know we could talk about this all day, but while we have you here, I know we have questions from the audience. Ralph.
Thank you, Ty. Yeah, we just had a couple from Facebook. Number one, Adriana mentioned, me personally, I've never seen announcements for a search. Is there any way we can make a more broad announcements throughout the tribe, like an Amber Alert kind of announcements through our people? I feel if more people were aware of these searches, it would be a bigger turnout. There are tribal members like me that don't know, but are more than willing to come out and help.
When we were searching for our last tribal member that was missing, we posted, we did a social media event, which was shared on the tribal member only page and our Puyallup tribal page, our official page. And then we shared it through email. But a lot of times there's not a lot of, we need to make a listserv, so when we're doing that, you can sign up for the listserv, we can send that out, and people who want to know about it, can get it more real time, because we don't always have a lot of time to plan that media outreach. It's very responsive. It has to be. But
It happens in crisis. Like there's a crisis.
Yes, exactly.
It's happening. Now you've got to respond. And so getting the word out is you do it as fast as possible, but it's not something that you're planning for weeks and days and months.
For one of the things too, I just want to say to that, there have been things, and I think people have helped and they don't even know that they've helped. So it's like, when somebody shares one of those flyers and people just go, like, that's one of the biggest things when you see those. So people like having there's information that comes out on there, and there's specific information that should be listed on there. But people have been a part of that. And so far we've been utilizing the main Puyallup page, and then it goes into the Puyallup member only, and those are open and unlocked to the public, and those can be shared by other folks. And when we're saying this, there's not been massive searches like,
Right.
In our community. So it's not that somebody's missed anything. We just know that there has been times like where there hasn't been a lot of momentum, or people have lives. We understand that too. So
Yep.
and I know not everybody's always able to make it when there's something going on.
We have time for one final question.
One more question from the Kostalikis. They just asked, can we volunteer? So I feel like it's a very broad question, but maybe just like how specifically can people be boots on the ground and help you guys out?
Yeah, I think I'll create a listserv and try and get that information out to everybody so that when we have opportunities and a need, and sometimes that need is, there's people that go missing from Oregon, Idaho, Montana. How many of us have relatives in Montana that come here to visit, or that come here for treatment, or have relocated here, or from Yakima even, that they're not necessarily Puyallup tribal members, but they're members of our tribal community. And we just need to get the word out as much as possible, whether that's through everybody sharing a link on their social media page with the poster or sharing it at work. How many people do you have in your different distribution list may have access to people, places where people gather, where people might know things. Like our hotel, once I was sharing a poster and getting ready to drive to every freaking hotel in Fife, and they were like, would you like me to share this on my D list? It's not everybody, but just that offer to share it through their distribution list.
That's awesome.
Is helpful.
Thank you guys very much for your time. It's been an honor to have you on your show. If you're out in the audience and you like this, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments in the comment box. We'll go through and respond to all of them as they come in. I'm Dave Wescott. This is Ty. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere where it's social. We're hanging out. Ty, any final thoughts as we close the show?
Are we bringing this thing in for a landing?
Yep. We're right there, brother.
I thank you. I raise my hands to you both. Thank you all for the great work you do. You set the record for our longest show. You're also our first guest. But
Two records
in one show. What do you know? But thank you. It was a joy to have you guys.
We'll see you later.
For having us.
Boy.
Oi.
Wait.